everyone is perfectly fine out there. गर्मियों का मौसम अपनी पीक की तरफ जाता हुआ और today in Lahore it's very warm. और today we have invited Usman who's joining us from Karachi. और सुबह कराची में इनसे बात हो रही थी तो कराची भी ह्यूमिड है तो बट माशाल्लाह ईद के बाद ये पहला सेशन है एंड फाइनली वी कैन एंजॉय अ कप ऑफ टी ड्यूरिंग दिस सेशन आल्सो सो today's session all about the change management and the improvement programs that the companies run and why they are important for us. We'll talk about that. We are very lucky to have Usman today. काफी अच्छे से हम कोशिश कर रहे थे इस सेशन को प्लान करें बट I'm really grateful to Usman for sparing time out और join किया. So welcome Usman.
Thank you, Mushfiq. Humbled to be here.
अच्छा जी, लेट मी इंट्रोड्यूस उस्मान. उस्मान से जी मेरा पहला तारुफ तो बहरहाल एंग्रो में ही हुआ और मेरी थॉट ये थी कि उस्मान ने प्रोसेस में ज्वाइन किया है एंग्रो में. बट टुडे व्हेन वी वर हैविंग अ चैट तो मुझे ये पहले पता लगा कि उस्मान वाज द पार्ट ऑफ द N1 टीम जिसने प्रोजेक्ट पे काम किया तो इनिशियल फेज के अंदर और उसके बाद उस्मान गॉट मूव टू प्रोजेक्ट. सो उस्मान इज बेसिकली मेटलर्जी एंड मटेरियल्स इंजीनियर फ्रॉम GIK. So he graduated in 2002, joined a steel company in Karachi, and then moved on to join Engro, जहाँ पे वो projects में भी रहा. And then finally his जो एक समझ लें कि highlight of Engro was the Six Sigma move, जो उस्मान ने इसके अंदर फिर बहुत flourish किया. He got black belt certification in Six Sigma, and then there was no stopping. Usman joined Nestle, I think, in 2011. He was the country lead for continuous improvement program, and वहाँ पे उस्मान ने काफी हद तक काम किया. Right now, Usman is with Chevron as their Six Sigma advisor for Africa and then Middle East and Europe. So Usman has gone big, mashallah, mashallah. And Six Sigma के बड़े expert हैं how to bring improvement, how to run improvement programs in the organizations, improvement cycles क्या हैं, change management क्या है. So thank you so much again Usman, because this is one area where जो youngsters हैं, even जो experienced लोग भी हैं, उनके लिए बड़ा अच्छा बड़ा fruitful session रहेगा and we'll be able to learn a lot from you. I hope introduction में मैंने कुछ miss नहीं किया.
No, I think you've been very generous with your words. Everything is from Allah Ta'ala, and however your journey transpires is based on the best you can do with what you've been granted in your life. And I'm very thankful for Allah Almighty for giving me all the opportunities that I've been able to fulfill and eventually having them work out in the path. My experience with Lean Sigma, like you mentioned, started off with Engro. However, the first time I actually alluded upon the topic was when I was in my first job. And a little bit of interaction I had with the topic was only for capturing a bit of data, making those tally charts, those 4 small lines, crossing the 5th one out. That was my first interaction on the subject matter. But eventually, when I got to work more at the forefront of the program at Engro, I realized that I'd run into my calling. And I thoroughly enjoyed working with people, developing them, solving problems, understanding the organizations from all the different aspects whenever you would get the chance to work across the value chain. And I think that kind of exploded as an experience when I joined Nestle, where I was able to work with 10 to 12 different businesses across a multitude of different brands and product portfolios, each having a different kind of a business challenge and value chain nature. That gave me a good thorough understanding of how businesses can operate and how we can help them all their financial strategies. Where Lean Six Sigma and similar continuous improvement methodologies can play that enabling role for delivering those excellent results. So eventually, back in 2019, I got an opportunity to join here with Chevron Downstream and Chemicals, where in about 1 year, I got the opportunity again to switch the role slightly from Pakistan to Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Those who might not be too aware of how Chevron operates, it's larger organizations, upstream, midstream, and downstream. So I'm part of downstream and chemicals, looking after integrated supply chain and Middle East and Africa, South Asia, globally. But having amazing time now working with people all across the globe at different time zones, understanding from their backgrounds and experiences of how these concepts can further be applied for delivering for the businesses. Every moment of
Zabardast.
it.
Wonderful. So you can always participate in this discussion. So what we've done is that Usman has prepared a few slides for you, hardly 5 to 6 slides. So just to give you the direction in which we will talk about. But आपके ज़हन में कोई सवाल है, कोई क्यूरी है, especially for the youngsters and the students, अगर आप कुछ और guidance लेना चाह रहे हैं उस्मान से, so you are always welcome. You can post your question in the comment section of this live stream, and I'll pick those questions from there, and we'll have them during this session. So Usman, let me share your slide deck, and then we can take a start. Hold on. So today's discussion is about continuous improvement and change management. Over to you, Usman.
Thanks, Mushfiq. So like Mushfiq suggested, I don't intend this to be any kind of a training session. I would love it if you could keep on posting your questions in between so that we can primarily make it an interactive to and fro discussion. The slides are just there for giving me cues on the different topics to talk about. So to move on to the first slide, what I'd love to talk about in the beginning is a bit of realization of how organizations can operate in the marketplace. Generally, if you've had a chance to watch one of the videos of a wonderful speaker, Simon Sinek, he talks about finite and infinite games. A finite game being of a nature where there are two absolute parties in a small battle, if you may call that, and they have a certain objective to achieve by a certain point in time. And there's a win or a lose situation by the end. However, we do realize that organizations, especially the larger ones, which have flourished over many, many years, they're not a part of that kind of thing. They're a part of more something which is more like an infinite game, where they are battling to thrive, survive, and outlast the competition. They don't see any end game after a couple of years. They have a long-term aspiration that they want to achieve. An organization actually find that as a win for them if they can flourish over the longer period of time and outlast the competition. So that brings me to another point that us as consumers, as shoppers and buyers, whenever we go out to a marketplace, you can go to the next slide. We are out there to buy a certain set of products or get some services from the suppliers. And should you want to buy a shirt or a shoe or a watch, even if you want to have a certain music song selection for yourself, you always have some conscious and subconscious and unconscious thought process going on in your mind, which allows you to come up with a certain decision when you're faced with a bunch of different products from different companies on the shelf and you end up picking only one out. There are a lot of things which are happening in your mind. And that concept tells you that there's a thing which is called the value proposition that exists. And that value proposition is something the organization is offering you as a consumer, because of which you have that exchange. You buy that value from the organization and you pay them money for it.
Achha, Usman, there is one comment from Khurram Shehzad. Probably the voice quality has something to do with it, but he's requested to just to slow down and talk a little bit slow so that they can understand. So probably शायद voice quality की वजह से है, but we can talk slow so that people can understand. Yes.
Cool. So that value proposition that an organization offers through its products and services, it's something which the entire organization as a value chain tries to enhance for delivering to the consumers. Because eventually, if the customer or the consumer doesn't buy your product off the shelf or doesn't acquire your services, then you as an entire organization can fail very quickly. So continuous improvement tries to empathize with the customers and consumers out there, tries to understand those value propositions, and then enhances them. And anything in retrospect within the organization is considered as something that we call waste in the organization. And
so Usman, when we जब हम ये choices की बात कर रहे हैं, for example, our children's school, our footwears and the watch that we select, how do you relate these examples to the business side? Because I missed that part.
So these are all products and services that we are acquiring from outside.
Yeah.
even the cell phone package that we pick up, the kind of clothes and accessories that we wear, even when you're choosing a music song selection,
Yeah.
even to your emotional aspects, like how do you select your wife or a husband? You always have certain concepts in your mind that these are the things that I'm looking for, because of which I'm able to have that mutual exchange. These are called the value proposition.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is entirely important for an organization to offer those values to the customers and consumers out there, not based on what the organization's strengths are, but based on what the consumers and market is looking for. What happened is in the past, about 50 odd years ago, was the organizations were able to dictate what was being brought about in the marketplace. But how industries have evolved, how consumers have evolved, the market has started dictating what the organizations need to do in order to satisfy them. Understanding of value that an organization needs to deliver, not that it can deliver, that it needs to deliver for the consumers. It's immensely important for the organization and the entire value chain to understand that they can maximize that internally and externally while using all the other which are in the list.
Okay. Perfect. Should I move to the next one?
Sure. You
Yeah.
know, with these thoughts in mind, you just look at some of these numbers. And this is a list that we don't really need to go through, but these are 60 organizations that were there in the Fortune 500 list back in 1955. And only these 60 remain a part of that list of 500 organizations in 2007. What that essentially means is that an organization only had a lifespan of about 60 years back in 1955 for being able to stay in that list of top 500 organizations. By 2019, that lifespan has reduced to 18 years, which tells you how
Wow.
quickly organizations are evolving, how quickly they're adapting to what they need to do, how continuously they're in that rapid race of delivering for the consumers, how that consumer is actually moving from one organization to the other just by understanding that this organization is giving me great value for money, not the other one.
तो
This is
इसका मतलब ये
driving,
हुआ, हाँ, इसका मतलब ये हुआ उस्मान, so there were whatever the Fortune 500 list was in 1955, there are only 60
yeah,
companies, those who have survived by 2017, and they are still in the Fortune 500 list. Amazing.
that's right. And McKinsey foresees that by 2027, 75% organizations which are right now in Fortune 500 will not be there anymore, just 6 years
Will
down
not.
the road.
So it's a survival sort of a threat for the organization, especially those who
It
are
is,
carrying a legacy.
it is that infinite game that we have to try and survive. And we can only do that if we can keep on trying to outperform our competition and
Yeah,
competition in the
very
marketplace.
very interesting. So uh, what's the main point that comes up? ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है ऐसा, और ये exponentially जो कंपनीज जो हैं वो गायब की होती चली जा रही हैं Fortune 500 में?
Wow, that's, I think, a very big topic that we can talk about all day, because if you just try and realize exponential growth is happening just in every aspect of this world, everywhere.
Yeah,
The population is growing exponentially. Nothing is stopping. Um, I actually gave a small talk about um, what was it called? Mass extinction event, and how some people think that human race might even be the sixth mass extinction event happening to the world, and because of that exponential growth that it's bringing about, both in population and all that it's doing to the world. So lot of reasons around that, but basically
hmm,
of how the organizations are trying to outlast each other, trying to outperform each other. That persistent pace and technological evolution is also something which is forcing organizations to just collapse and be out of that race. You know, as a small example, how smartphones have made those featured phones obsolete entirely in only a span
एग्जैक्टली
of a couple of years.
एग्जैक्टली और इसके ऊपर यकीनन हम आगे सेशन में बात करेंगे कि ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है, और ऐसी क्या चेंजेस हैं जो कि हमारे इर्द गिर्द दुनिया में आती चली जा रही हैं.
Yeah. Um, so the biggest of the organizations, if you can ever think of any name, you would always find a continuous improvement program embedded in their systems. And organizations, what they've done is they've looked at how things were being dealt with in the past, and they have picked and chosen any of the tools and methodologies which make most sense to them, and they've kind of jumbled them together in a way that is most pragmatic and most synergizable in their existing systems and structures. Toyota, for instance, they're one of the pioneers of these platforms. They have Toyota Production System, which is called TPS. Nestle has a program which is a very comprehensive curriculum of these methodologies called Nestle Continuous Excellence. Similarly, Nike has lean manufacturing, Tetra Pak has world-class manufacturing. But the essence of this is that all the organizations, they don't just follow these technical jargons of lean or Six Sigma or Lean Six Sigma. What they do is they try to understand which of these tools and methodologies with proven portfolio of the past and provide them the best solution for their business nature. In every organization, you might find different solutions, but you will find them there absolutely.
So उस्मान थोड़ा सा आप एक्सप्लेन कर सकेंगे कि ये TPS और WCM और LM NCE ये क्या वर्ड्स हैं, किसके एब्रिविएशंस हैं?
TPS is Toyota Production System. WCM is World Class Manufacturing. Google has OKR. In fact, that's I guess a typo. OKR is Objectives and Key Results. Nestle has Nestle Continuous Excellence. Nike has Lean Manufacturing. GE had Six Sigma, hardcore as a program. Yeah. We know they're considered one of the flagship people for Six Sigma rollout under Jack Welch's leadership. However, that brings me to the next slide. While there might be a lot of success stories behind this, you might also find some contrary opinions on it. Some organizations have just not been able to succeed with these programs in the longer run. Even this article by Harvard Business Review, which is titled Avoid the Improvement Hype Cycle, is not specific about discouraging this program, but what it tells you essentially are these 3 bullet points on the right side. That you should be able to understand that these programs are essential for you to be there, for them to be there. But if they have not succeeded, you should not just discard them. You should be able to ask those very important questions, like reflecting on why these initiatives did not work in the past, or why did they fizzle out over a certain time frame. And I can guarantee you that most of the time, one of the biggest reasons behind it is a change in leadership and lack of drive of that program and the future that you see ahead by that new leadership team. That's most of the time the fundamental case. And if that's not it, then the second biggest factor at times which you end up seeing is an organization's consistent pursuit only towards cost reduction and not towards driving a continuous improvement culture as a whole, but focusing too much on just cost reduction. That leads to a lot of problems the overall program and how that can be considered as something that can bring the organization ahead of its competition.
सही
Well,
अच्छा इसका मतलब जो हम पिछली स्लाइड पे बात कर रहे थे, so at the end of the day it's all about improvement and the excellence program that you are running in any organization. So it's a continuous journey towards the excellence that we've set for ourselves, और वो फिर बेंचमार्क भी आहिस्ता आहिस्ता हम उसको बढ़ाते चले जाते हैं. So at the end of the day every program is somehow इसी के गिर्द घूम रहा है.
Yeah, and it's always an enabler. It isn't a factory on its own with its own separate agenda. If an organization can really be successful about this, what they would see as an end game for these continuous improvement programs is that this would start becoming functionally embedded across the organization. You would not have a task force sitting and centrally governing this program, but you would have it as a natural part of your integrated organization. Everyone would find it as a natural way of doing things. For instance, at GE, they still have this. They require people to be at least green belt certified to qualify at a certain to be able to qualify for a certain leadership level in an organization. You cannot acquire that leadership role without being qualified as a Lean Sigma or Six Sigma green belt. That's how they're trying to integrate it in a natural way of working.
Perfect. जी मैं ही आपका slide deck दोबारा कर दूं on. Yeah. Should I move to the next one?
Sure. Now, I wanted to talk a bit about change management as well, because there's kind of a tri-party agreement in an organization whenever you're running that. You have processes that you want to be run in an organization, like procurement. You want product to be delivered from one end to the other. You want manufacturing to happen. But then for those processes, you always have some systems in place. You might have SAP rolled out as an ERP. You might have Excel-based systems. You might even have paper-based systems for executing those processes. And the third party is always the people who run those systems for making sure those processes processes are running effectively. Now, in all the improvement projects that we do, whether they are capital projects or basic process engineering projects, what we need to ensure is that we're not forgetting about the third party, which are people. And if you look at the title of the slide, it tells you that 75% of all rollouts of ERP, they end up failing in an organization. That's a huge number. And that number is 50% for SAP rollouts. Or just imagine that.
Right.
The amount of investment an organization requires for an SAP rollout is immense. It requires a lot of people dedication, hiring of consultants, rolling it out, lots of trainings, then changing your entire ways of working onto the new platform. And if 50% of those platforms rollouts fail, imagine the loss an organization faces out of that. And that's not just the direct financial loss of running the project, but how an organization might have been able to perform. That's an opportunity loss as well. SAP,
Yeah.
like with other some change management models, has a specific change management program dedicated to an SAP rollout. I got an opportunity to work in such a program in the past in one of the companies. It's called OCM, Organization Change Management. But just like with DE's change acceleration process model and Cortex 8-step change management model, these follow a very natural sequence of steps, very similar in nature, but they're essentially banking on having the right leadership commitment there, training and developing people, but first of all, starting with a very strong sense of urgency. Having your people, the key stakeholders, realize the time for change is here, and it is very strongly being driven by the top management as well. In case of change, becomes a driving force for the entire rollout. And these change management programs not only ensure that change happens, but it also accelerates, uses the time in which people can start adopting the change and trying to deliver the benefits on it. What does that do? It improves your rate of return on the investment that you've done.
Yeah. So what we are saying is कि जब भी आप इस तरह के इनिशिएटिव को रोल आउट कर रहे हैं, so the track record it says कि भाई 75% of the programs that have been launched वो फेल हो गए, तो इसका मतलब ये है कि there is something wrong that is going on. और इसी से मिलते जुलते सवालात जो हैं
Right?
वो कुछ कमेंट सेक्शन में आए हैं. जी उस्मान, आप कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं? जी उस्मान, आर यू देयर? ये मेरा प्रॉब्लम हुआ है. उस्मान, आर यू देयर? Maybe we have lost Usman. Ji, Usman, are you there? Ji, we've lost Usman, but he's joining in. But एक important discussion जो इस पे चल रही है, वो है जो मैंने ग्रुप के ऊपर कुछ messages भी देखे हैं. Let me read some of the messages that are coming in. Nabil साहब ने कहा, with every changing moment, the company needs to change themselves. We are in the middle of next industrial revolution. The companies that are most nimble, most adaptive to this change can only survive. Beautiful thought, Nabil. मजीद कुछ और नहीं कहा जा सकता इसके ऊपर. You are absolutely right. Those who will not change, those who will not improve themselves, they'll miss the train. Abdul Basit ने join किया है हमें, and they've got a comment. He's got a comment. Hello, hi everyone. Hi Basit. I guess mostly due to acquisitions and mergers, bigger elephants of Dow, Unilever, etc. They swallow these startups, which is what uh, in the capitalist regime. Uh, yes, but a lot of new startups they are also coming in, और इनोवेशन जो वो लेके आते हैं और जो कल्चर जिसको वो परवान चढ़ाते हैं, इट्स एब्सोल्युटली अमेजिंग टू सी सम ऑफ द स्टार्टअप्स किस तरह से वो ग्रो करते हैं, एंड देन यस यू आर राइट, जो कैपिटलिस्ट जी उस्मान, आर यू बैक?
I think so. For some
या या
reason, my laptop doesn't like me too much.
अच्छा Usman, I was just going through some of the comments that are there. बासित ने एक बड़ा जबरदस्त क्वेश्चन किया हुआ है या एक थॉट दी है कि mostly because of the acquisitions and mergers, so bigger companies or the elephants like Dow and Unilever, they swallow these startups, और जो कि capitalist regime है, and those who are
Mhm.
bringing change, they get acquired by the bigger माफिया तो नहीं मैं कहता, आजकल माफिया बड़ा खतरनाक टर्म है, बट बिगर
Giants as well.
जाइंट्स जो है वो. व्हाट आर योर थॉट्स ऑन दिस?
Um, market competitiveness के ऊपर भी कुछ rules and regulations होते हैं. आप उनको ज़्यादा breach नहीं कर सकते. However, if organizations get bought out, it's always a mutual understanding for organizations to have that exchange for being
या
sold out
या
and then bought out. However, it's part of that infinite game that we were talking about earlier on. What smaller organizations try to do in the short term is that because of that smaller infrastructure, they have very low fixed costs, which allow them to have that
एग्जैक्टली.
a greater margin for competing in the marketplace. So they can start damaging a larger organization's product portfolio very quickly in the short term.
या
They cannot survive that. It's not sustainable for them because they can't match in the volume. But let's say a small organization has a startup in one of the cities in the country, which might be one of the flagship cities for a larger organization. They can start hurting the volumes over there. That makes a big impact to a larger organization. So they can have then promotion activities in parallel, which tries to outsmart the smaller organization. That business stack always remains there. Smaller
या
organizations have their own finite battles because they're not afraid of losing. They're just a startup. But the larger ones have that fear of losing their market share. So they have different strategies in the infinite game of how to compete that.
या एग्जैक्टली. सो उस्मान, a couple of questions, let's take a couple of questions. Saad का question है, उस्मान भाई, what is the end result of this entire continuous improvement process, and how do we achieve it? What is the end result?
As is a possible end result of a constitution of a country, of how good you can apply it in an organization, the country can run equally that well only. How
Yeah,
well people understand it, how well they apply it. There's nothing wrong with the constitution of our country even. But we know we have a lot of challenges as, if you might call a country an organization as well. So these programs have different ways of being rolled out. Some organizations do have the task force-based rollout strategy. For instance, an organization called Danone has a very central team leading all of these projects, moving from one part of the organization to the other, while some other organizations have a very decentralized structure
yeah,
ingrained as an organic part of ways of working. However, depends on how the organization wants to take it. Do they want everyone to be a part of that journey, or do they want people to be focusing on the functional deliverables while having teams separately working like consultants in the organization, moving from one place to the other, working on
I think we've lost Usman again. But साथ जो आपका क्वेश्चन है वो उसका अगर मैं उसके ऊपर थोड़ा सा कमेंट कर सकूं, the entire purpose of this continuous improvement process is to bring improvement and then look for further improvements. So just like uh, एक प्रोसेस की तरह, जहाँ पे एंड रिजल्ट आप अचीव करते हैं, देन यू लुक फॉर अनदर अपॉर्चुनिटी. सो इट्स अ कंटिन्यूअस, द ड्राइव इज देयर टू गेट टू अ लेवल ऑफ एक्सेलेंस. और जब आप एक स्टेप अचीव करते हैं, यू लुक फॉर अनदर माइलस्टोन. दैट इज हाउ द कंपनीज रन इट. एंड उस्मान भी थोड़ा सा इसी के ऊपर ही बात कर रहे थे. अच्छा जी, we've got Nabi Mirza Muhammad Naveed Saab. Depends upon the maturity of the organization at the time of the launch and how much resources you are going to invest on that. Maybe a comment जो हम बातचीत कर रहे थे इस वक्त. ओके जी, आप हमें सुन सकते हैं, देख सकते हैं नबील साहब. बट आई थिंक नाउ आई हैव लॉस्ट उस्मान अगेन. जी उस्मान, आर यू विद मी? जी उस्मान विल जॉइन अस. जी उस्मान इज बैक now, I think from a mobile phone. But
Yep.
Good to see you, Usman. So I was just going through the comment. ये जो क्वेश्चन है कॉन्टिन्यूस इंप्रूवमेंट का, इसी के ऊपर ही मैं अपना कमेंट दे रहा था कि जी इट्स अ कॉन्टिन्यूस इंप्रूवमेंट जर्नी, एंड व्हेन यू आर डन विद वन प्रोसेस इंप्रूवमेंट यू लुक फॉर further opportunities of improvement in that process or maybe in some of the other processes. So at the end result जिसकी हम बात कर रहे हैं वो improvement है जो कि आप step by step लेके आते चले जाते हैं. Any further comment that you would like to add to this bit?
Yeah, I can give an example of Toyota. We know Toyota
Yeah,
are the hallmark of quality improvement. They've always been that way.
yeah,
And I got a chance to participate in one of their quality control conferences in Karachi back in 2011, I think. And they have one of the KPI which is called number of ideas generated per person. So they monitor it as one of the top level KPIs. How many ideas are being generated for continuous improvement on an average per person per year. So for Pakistan, their KPI was at 18 ideas per person. However,
okay.
their benchmark was still Japan. Now, naturally, we would expect that Japan would already be at the epitome of quality levels. They might not even have any opportunity for improvement anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
But their ideas per person was an unbelievable 60 ideas per person per year.
Oh,
Now that goes very against your. That's very counterintuitive because you expect that number to be very low compared to a
yeah,
country like Pakistan. But what happens is, what you can try to realize out of this is that the maturity level of continuous improvement also increases the further down the experience you are in the
yes.
timelines of continuous improvement programs. You get better visibility for where to identify those opportunities. You have better visibility of those challenges that you can improve on, and you have better innovative ideas as well that you can bring in for further enhancing your organization. So
Beautiful.
it becomes a never-ending journey.
ब्यूटीफुल यार, ये होता है ना एक्सपर्ट का कमेंट, जबरदस्त. अच्छा जी उस्मान, शुड आई स्टार्ट योर स्लाइड डेक? हम उसको दोबारा से कर लेते हैं. So
Sure.
we were talking about the rollouts of ERPs जहाँ पे 75% of the programs fail. Let's go to the next slide, or do you want me to stay on this slide?
Now we can go to the next one, but the idea of sharing the next one was about communication, of how that is immensely important for not just for change management to be effective, but for any work that you do in an organization, especially the engineers. I think we had a build session around communication as well, perhaps led
Yeah,
by Kamar Jalil, if I remember correctly.
yeah.
But this is a book which was recommended by my trainer, the person who trained me in the beginning. His name's Kamran Kiani. In one of the training skills workshop, he told us about this book called Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath, who are two brothers, both working in the US. One is teaching this topic in Stanford. The other is a consultant over there. And what they're trying to do is understand through decades of past experiences across different walks of life, professional and personal, of why there are certain things which just stick to the minds of the audience. You might have gone through days when you wake up in the morning and there is that really crappy song just stuck in your head and you can't get it out of your head.
Exactly.
And
Throughout the day.
and precisely. And there are reasons for that. So they've studied all of those factors and they've come up with a certain understanding of how you can have a very simple framework behind it, and you can construct your communications in a way that they just get stuck in the people's mind, like that crappy song that we were just talking about. How
Yeah.
can you make that communication so powerful? I would not give it away, but I would recommend that you Google it up. You can find it about 8 pages summary of the book. You can find
Okay.
a downloadable audio version as well, which is wonderful to hear and listen to. And you can even find a one-pager crisp summary that you can refer to in the future. And another book, in fact, which I loved listening to, was called "Find Out Anything from Anyone, Anytime." And as I'd say, I hate to use the word dangerous, but as dangerous as this might be for some people who might not want to tell something, it allows you the ability to ask those very powerful questions in a way that lets you gather a lot of vital information in the organization, especially when you're trying to understand the concept of value from your customers and consumers. And this book has been written by certain experts who teach those interrogative techniques to people in CIA and FIA, those kind of people. So it's a very powerful book and very simplistic, but still very helpful. Highly
So
recommend it.
how do you connect the communication bit in the overall change management and the improvement program जिसके ऊपर हम बात करें उसके अंदर communication को आप कैसे link करेंगे?
Yeah. So back at my days at Engro, there was a change management training that I once delivered, and there was an illustration that I used for that on the first slide. Now you imagine medieval times. You have a battlefield in front of you, and soldiers at the opposite end carrying shields and swords, the whole swarm of them standing there. And at your end, there is your king standing with his knights, and there is one scientist kind of a guy at the back end with a machine gun in his hand. And he's tapping on the shoulder of the king and trying to catch his attention. But the king is saying, "Move aside, I've got a battle on my hands." And that general, that king, is just not paying attention to that amazing solution that can bring about that immense level of change in the entire battle right in front of him. That's where communication comes in. You have those immense engineering solutions, technical solutions as engineers, especially. But where we fail mostly, you'll find it time and again in different organizations across the hierarchy, in fact, even up to certain leadership levels, that people just aren't able to communicate as effectively as would have as the opportunity would have called for. And that just leads to that inability of bringing about that change effectively in a way that the organization could actually reap from. Be those smaller projects, be those larger programs like HSC or Lean Six Sigma or continuous improvement, whichever. Whatever the scale of the change might be or an effort might be, communication is the backbone of all of it. We truly undermine the importance.
Yeah. So communication is one of the major challenges that an organization can face when they are going towards the journey of. What other challenges do you think are they are facing resistance or एक resistance offer करते हैं इस पूरे program के अंदर?
Yeah, these structured programs that we talked about on the change management slide, they're a great guidance for it. If you want, you can Google them up. You can reach out to me for some further information as well. But an example from the change acceleration process is in the middle of its structure, where you're trying to influence stakeholders or understand your stakeholders. You do a stakeholder analysis of which key stakeholders are supportive of your program, which are neutral at a neutral stage, which are going against the program or the initiative itself. Then there are certain tools which allow you to interpret their concerns. So the biggest question you can ask is, from their perspective, what's in it for me? Exactly. And their challenges can generally be classified on three fronts. They can have technical challenges. For instance, people who might be very experienced on paperwork systems. If it's an SAP rollout after that, they might be completely oblivious of how to use a computer. So there might be technical challenges. There might be cultural challenges. Some people just might not be used to different ways of working, different ways of the organization to be run. They might have cultural challenges. They might have the fear of losing their seniority when some smaller or younger generation comes in with some new tips and techniques of new ways of working. That those cultural challenges might be there. Or there just might be some political challenges as well in between the organization. So politics in an organization always exists. Some have more of it, some have lesser of it, but there might be some political challenges as well. So it's up to a change manager to try and understand those and then address those challenges from the right perspective.
So ये किसका role होगा जो just to facilitate and to give an enabler sort of environment, और वो enabler basically कौन होगा इस पूरे initiative के अंदर?
depends on the scale of the initiative we're talking about. So wherever it might be a larger initiative influencing a larger part of an organization, firms which have sensitivity to these kind of challenges which can potentially exist have a dedicated team working behind these. So they have a change management team which has a central change manager, and the role of this team is to have those change agents deployed across the arena of the organization where the change is supposed to be applied. By change agents, I mean people who might be ambassadors, already enthusiastic of enrolling onto the program. Because you always have that mix with you. So these change managers at central team, they have the prerogative of understanding the team members in their arena. They have that proactive strategy deployed beforehand of understanding the entire infrastructure and the challenges beforehand, before that final or the first communication comes to the teams in the hierarchy. So they develop those and deploy those change agents all across who help them drive the change in the scope of work.
अच्छा, आपकी इसी बात से ना मुझे एक बड़ा जबरदस्त एक प्रोग्राम था एंग्रो में ही लेटेस्ट स्टेजेस में आपके जाने के बाद एक इनिशिएट हुआ वायरल चेंज के नाम से. तो द कॉन्सेप्ट वाज टू ये जो आइडिएशन का एंटायर प्रोसेस है या क्रिएटिव थिंकिंग का पूरा प्रोसेस है, इसको हम थोड़ा सा इनकरेज करें. तो चेंज एजेंट्स जिनकी आपने बात की, वहां पे जो इसको वहां पे एक रोल प्ले किया, लोगों से ही सर्वे करवाया गया और उनसे ही पूछा गया कि कौन से लोग हैं जो आपको within the organization inspire करते हैं, and those were pegged as influencers for the organization इसको promote करने के लिए. और वो generally फिर वो बैरियर या वो रेजिस्टेंस क्रॉस करने में आसानी रहती है अगर आप उन लोगों को इन्वॉल्व करने जिनकी बात लोग सुनने को तैयार हैं. तो कम्युनिकेशन वाली बेट भी जो आपने कही थी वो बड़ी रेलेवेंट. अच्छा उस्मान, जी
I would like to add slightly different angles to that also on top of what you just said. So there is always a formal structure in an organization which we're very well aware of. The entire organogram of the organization, the departments, very well formally and clearly laid out. Then it's up to you as change managers to understand and develop, in fact, at times, if you're in such an influential role, to have that informal structure working for you. And that's up to you how you develop that informal structure in the organization. Should you have that visibility of where you want to see that vision of how you want to see, let's say, a certain set of team working 2 years or 3 years down the road, you develop that infrastructure of informal connections so that you can get all of those tasks and work done in the time ahead of you. So that proactive vision and sight needs to be there for that informal structure, because that's the most powerful thing for you. One example I can also give of another experience someone else had that I learned greatly from was that a person went to a gymnasium to interact with a senior stakeholder who was just not getting convinced in the meeting rooms otherwise. So they both were running on the treadmill. They got that formal barrier out of the way. And just in that activity at the gym, they were able to get some communication across and the person got the buy-in from the senior executive. So informal structures play a very vital role for you.
Yeah. Achha, Usman, what do you think is the role of the top management in promoting this change or whatever the initiative that has been taken? उस रोल के बारे में थोड़ा सा एक्सप्लेन करें.
Without the right leadership role, like we shared in the beginning as well, that it has been one of the biggest reasons for any program to fail. If you don't have the blessing from the top, whether that's in your professional life or your personal life, anything that you do has an immense chance of failure. Now, we might be thinking, that at times you might be in a situation where your senior stakeholders might be one-off case, and if you can have a workaround again about them, you might be able to drive change in the organization. That might be a case, but generally there are very few. The entire sentiment generally is driven from the top, and by the top, I mean not just your line manager or the department managers, but all the way to the top of an organization. Because programs like HSC are very similar to Lean Six Sigma or continuous improvement programs. They require that blessing all the way from the top. And organizations like GE also face these biggest challenges, because of which after Jack Welch, the entire program kind of took a nosedive. It's still there. It hasn't fizzled out, but it just doesn't have the drive at the scale of Jack Welch's time.
Yeah. Okay, Usman, you being a metallurgy and materials engineer, how did you ended up in Six Sigma, Lean and वो बड़ी जबरदस्त ये terms हैं. तो आपका इंटरेस्ट इसके अंदर जो है वो कैसे डेवलप हुआ एंड क्या स्टोरी थी ये?
यार मेरा पहला एक्सपीरियंस तो हुआ था back in 2002 with
या
this. But I came at the forefront of this somewhere around my time in Engro, and I just realized that I loved doing this. Even while working as a project engineer, I was working also as a green belt on many projects on the side, also developing Lean Six Sigma we called it over there, as a program
या
itself. So it's not just the function which was going through continuous improvement, but the continuous improvement program itself was evolving over a certain period of time. And I loved to keep on adding ideas to that too. And you know, when I got the opportunity to work as a black belt, that's where I guess really started flourishing. I got an open domain. I loved having an amazing boss like Inam Allah Naveed Khan, who allowed me that
या
autonomy and that freedom of application of ideas and working all across the manufacturing division. In fact, also interacting in the commercial part of the business. But that autonomy allowed me to apply my concepts and thoughts in a more thorough manner. And I loved doing that. I got good response as well. We got good feedback from the organization. We had, I guess, over ₹1 billion delivered after a couple of years as benefits. And I think I just wanted to keep on doing that. On the softer side, I took it as a conscious choice as well. I kept on having mentoring sessions with some of my advisors within and outside the organization as well. I tried developing network across the globe, and they gave me some good insight to this too. One of the important questions I asked, which gave me answers all over the place, was that what should a person do should he want to be of the top 20 professionals in the field in the world?
या
And one of the people said that that should not be your aspiration. How the program needs to work or should work, or what your aspirations should be, how you can become a functional leader as a part of an organization while being an expert on these concepts and methodologies. Now, that's a good perspective to have, but that's not the only perspective. Some people like myself are enthusiastic about these programs, like the way I am.
या
And I want to develop myself in this field as one of the experts because the people I learn from are already there. And people like myself learn from them, find that opportunity to learn from them and apply them in the professional and personal walks of life. So I took it as a conscious choice because it also allowed me a good work-life balance. It wasn't a subject matter which would ever have anything in firefighting mode. I would not be required to have to take calls overnight in the middle of the night for any plant shutdown or outages to happen. So while this was a very important part of an organization, this was also something which allowed me a great balance in my personal and professional life. And I love that. I hold my personal life very important to me. It's very dear. And I like making sure that my work life is there to support my personal life, not the other way around.
परफेक्ट परफेक्ट. सो उस्मान, जो यंगस्टर्स जो हैं वो अगर इसको ज्वाइन करना चाहें एज ए कैरियर अपॉर्चुनिटी, सिक्स सिग्मा हो या ये जो चेंज मैनेजमेंट का एक एंटायर कैरियर लाइन है, what would be your message for them? How do they proceed in this direction?
One of the greatest disadvantages our students in Pakistan have is that is something you're trying to find a solution to as well, Mushfiq, through these platforms, is
Yeah,
the connection between the academia and the industry. There's a big disconnect in that. And the only time we try to find a connection in that is during our final year projects or the internships that we might want to do. However, those are very specific in nature with a certain short objective in place. Your platform is helping break those barriers too. And one of the things that people can do is try to be proactive about understanding these subject matters. And if should they be willing for it, they can acquire certifications on these on their own as well. You don't need to be a part of an organization to be certified on any level in these continuous improvement programs. But what you can do is be proactive enough, get those certifications on your own, and give that great boost to your CV when you start applying for your jobs. It applies all across your, I'd say, experience profile. It doesn't necessarily have to be during your early parts of your career. But as you can see from the list of the top 500 organizations in the world, a vast majority of them require these programs to be in place. They require you to be a part of that journey. And should you be able to bring better contribution to the table, that's where your value increases as well. So my message
Yeah,
to the teams would be to be proactive and get as much knowledge on that as possible.
and secondly, whatever information or knowledge they've got out of that certification or जो भी आप study कर रहे हैं, they can always apply that knowledge to the portfolio जिसमें वो operate कर रहे हैं. For example, in maintenance, in operations, in process. So वो जो on the job learning शुरू होगी, और इसके लिए यकीनन top की support जरूर चाहिए होती, but you can always take initiative in your own small domain जिसमें आप operate करें, and that's how you learn and improve yourself.
And that's the
Usman,
best thing you can do.
yes, exactly. अच्छा, कुछ क्वेश्चंस हैं और एक बड़ा जबरदस्त क्वेश्चन है. अब्दुल बासित ने लिखा जी, क्विक सिली क्वेश्चन बट इट्स नॉट दैट सिली. हाउ डू यू रैंक इमरान खान्स वे ऑफ चेंज मैनेजमेंट एज मोस्ट टू सजेस्ट हिम फॉर कॉम्प्रोमाइजेस?
I haven't studied his change management tactics specifically. We're only at the receiving end, and as with any stage play that you might have ever seen in your academic life or afterwards as well, us as the audience are only at the receiving end, and only the actors on stage know where they're making mistakes. So we might see a good show happening or a poor one, but it's only the actors on the stage who are bringing about that change, who have that strategy in mind, who have those roles in their minds. They're aware of how good they are at those performances. So we at the receiving end might really know what he's trying to do, because at the influencing end, if you know that you are being influenced, then the influencer is not playing a good role. However, a book I'm reading nowadays, I would recommend it to everyone. It's Siratul Nabi. It's called The Sealed Nectar. And the biggest and the best example ever that mankind will ever see for change management is how Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam brought about that change in those 23 years of all the steps he took from the beginning of day one when he got the first wahi all the way till the time of his passing away. That's the best example of change management that you can ever study.
Yeah. So what's the name of the author?
Of the book?
Yeah.
I can look that up because it's an Arabic name. I don't remember it top of my head, but Makhtoom something. I can share it with the team afterwards.
Okay. So what you can do is that you can comment कर दीजिएगा आप इसी live stream में. People can refer to that book. अच्छा, एक और question जो मेरी नजर से गुजरा है, Suhail Nadeem ने comment किया, I think there is no end to continuous improvement. It's a journey, it's a cyclic process that continues. It is for and leads to sustainability and engagement that is staying longer in the business. Usman, any comment on that?
It's good to hear from Suhail. He is a good buddy of mine, and he's one of the proponents of the program as well. He has great experience on that. If anyone would want to learn something from him, I would highly recommend that you get in touch with him too.
जबरदस्त. और सुहेल ने इमीडिएटली जी बुक का नाम भी रेफर कर दिया. अल रहीक अल मखतूम इज द बुक ऑथर नेम, आई थिंक. उन्होंने कमेंट कर दिया. सो एनीबॉडी हु इज इंटरेस्टेड इन रीडिंग दैट बुक, वो यहाँ से डिटेल ले सकते हैं. जी उस्मान, एनी फाइनल थॉट्स अगर आप कुछ देना चाहें, स्पेशली फॉर द यंगस्टर्स एंड दोज हु आर न्यू इनटू देयर कैरियर्स, उनके लिए अगर कोई मैसेज देना चाहें.
My suggestion to the audience would be, if this topic is new for you, try grabbing a couple of smaller topics within and try applying them in your personal life. One small example I can give of something I tried to do once, might not have been a very good idea, is that I asked my wife, asked her to learn a bit about Lean Six Sigma and do a Lean Six Sigma project on our house budget. And any of the savings that she can bring can go into her pocket.
तो भाई ये घर पे भी सिक्स सिग्मा आएगा क्या?
But what I'm trying to tell you, what I'm trying to share with the teams is that these thoughts and ideas, once you understand them, not just know them, but you understand them, they can have a great impact in your personal life as well.
Yeah.
Haven't you had a time when you would have forgotten your keys, where you placed your keys for the car or your home? You forgot where you placed your cell phone, looking them all over the place.
मेरे साथ तो अक्सर होता है ये.
Yeah. So you don't need to go and do a 5S project all over your house, but you can apply a very simple concept of a place for everything and everything in its place. A very fundamental concept of 5S. So for your important things like your keys and cell phones and your charging spots, have a place for everything and put everything in space every time. Solves tons and tons of your problems. So what I'm trying to tell you is grab small examples from these larger concepts, see how you can apply them in your personal life, because that is where you can get the best conviction behind them. And if you want to teach someone else as well, try to do the same.
Zabardast. Thank you so much, Usman. It was great having you. टॉपिक बहुत बड़ा है बट एटलीस्ट एक फीलर हमने लोगों को जरूर दिया है कि यू कैन हैव दिस एज अ कैरियर पाथ फॉर योरसेल्फ एंड व्हाटएवर डिटेल्स लोगों को चाहिए उस्मान इज ऑलवेज अवेलेबल what I would suggest, Usman, if you can go through the comment section of this stream, and if you can add some value to some of the questions that people have asked, so लोगों को एक opportunity मिलेगी आपसे interact करने की भी. Thank you so much, Usman.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mushfiq, for this opportunity, and thank you to the audience for being here and taking out the time. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Ji. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.